So in this example, we're going to look at a binomial probability distribution, and we're going to find the mean, standard deviation, as well as the minimum and maximum usual values for this problem. So this example is, in a given elementary school of 474 children, the probability of selecting a child that loves math is 10%, or converting that to a decimal, 0.10. We want to find the mean, standard deviation, and minimum and maximum usual values of selecting a child who loves math in this particular elementary school. So we want to recall for a binomial probability distribution that the mean is equal to n times p. So in our problem, we need to identify our n and our p. So n in this case is the total number of children in this school, which is 474. And the probability of selecting a student or child who loves math is 10%, or 0.10. So in order to calculate the mean, we just do the multiplication. So that gives us 474 times 0.10, and that gives us 47.4 children who love math. Now, for the standard deviation, we're going to use the symbol sigma, and that formula is the square root of n times p times q. So the standard deviation, sigma, is equal to the square root of n times p times q. So we know what our n is, and we know what our p is. We just need to figure out what our q is. So in order to find our q, we take 1 minus the value of p, so that's 1 minus 0.10, or 0.90. So now we have all three of those pieces of information, and we're able to plug it into our formula and then use our calculator to find those values. So we have the square root of n, which is 474, times p, which is 0.10, times our q, which is 0.90. So what you want to do first is you want to multiply those three numbers in your calculator. And then when you do that, take your final answer, take the square root, and we'll get that the standard deviation is equal to 6.5 children in this case. Now we want to compute next and lastly our minimum and maximum usual values. So the minimum usual value is given as the mean minus 2 times the standard deviation. So we know what our mean is. We know what our standard deviation is. So the mean minus 2 times the standard deviation is equal to, now really we don't want to do rounding until we're at the very end of our problem, so probably for this standard deviation we want to keep that decimal number in our calculator. But if we do the mean minus 2 times the standard deviation, we're going to get 34.3 children. And then for the last computation, we'll do our maximum usual value, and the maximum usual value is our mean plus 2 times the standard deviation. Again, remember not to do rounding until you get to the very end of your computation. So the mean plus 2 times the standard deviation, which is the maximum usual value, would be 60.5 children. So in this example of a binomial probability distribution, we calculated the mean, the standard deviation, and the minimum and maximum usual values.